Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora and welcome to another Manawanui live stream. My name is Simon and today we have Ainsley, the founder of Flying Kites, joining us today. We will be covering all of the wonderful services that they offer, but we'll be focusing in particularly on recruitment support, planning and some of the exciting projects that they are working on. Before we get into the topic today with Ainsley, I do just want to acknowledge up front to those who are concerned or who have seen the announcement from Minister Upston about the bill that is going to be discussed in Parliament. At this stage, we don't have enough information to make any sort of meaningful comment on it. We will just wait and see at this stage what more information they can provide around what is going to be in the bill. I do want to acknowledge that there is a feeling of concern in the community about what this may mean, and all I can do is offer the reassurance that the Minister shared earlier around the fact that nobody's funding or supports is going to be impacted or change anytime soon. And we will just need to wait until we have the ability to provide our feedback on the bill as it goes through the standard process in Parliament. So yes, if you have any questions about that, I would encourage you to go direct to the Minister's office or Disability Support Services as well. So with that said, let's direct our attention to Ainsley. Ainsley is from Flying Kites, as I said. I would love for you to please introduce yourself to those of our viewers who are unaware of your services. Give us a little bit of history around where Flying Kites has come from and what you currently do for the disability community. Kia ora, Ainsley.
Kia ora. So hi everybody, my name is Ainsley. Wow, that was a bit clunky, my apologies. So I am the CEO of Flying Kites. So I guess a little bit of context of me before I talk about Flying Kites. I have worked in disability services for about 20 years. I've worked for some really big organisations. I've worked for some teeny tiny ones. I've worked in an individualised funding host. And now I run Flying Kites. In my personal world, I'm based in Auckland. I've got some little kids and an older child, and we use individualised funding in our household. So I've kind of got lots of different parts of my life that touch into this work. And about 5 years ago, I decided to start Flying Kites. So we started in 2021. And for me, it was coming from a place of frustration. It was knowing that people had this individualised funding, having the personal experience ourselves of having the funding, and not being able to get what we needed out of the system. So Flying Kites is kind of the charity that I started to try and fill in some of those gaps. So that's, I guess, kind of the history of where we came from and how we started. And we've grown from being teeny tiny to still quite small. There's only about 3 of us who work in the business. So we work across the whole country, but only in, kind of a reasonably small personal scale. Shall I keep going, talk about what we do?
Simon speaking. Yes, please, Ainsley, continue on.
Okay, Ainsley speaking. So what we do is 3 main things. We offer recruitment services, goal planning services, and then a range of kind of resources and projects. So none of them have eligibility criteria or complicated referral processes. We don't have any government contracts. So what that means is that we can work with anyone who wants our services. So we're really able to be flexible to who you are and what you need. The downside of that is that we charge fees for what we do, but everything that we do should fit within individualised funding budgets, clearly, depending on circumstances, but we're yet to be turned down for any invoices. So if I talk about each one, the first one is our recruitment service. In our recruitment service, our goal is to help you find the support workers that you need. What we know is that not all support workers are the same. What we know is that the right support worker for you might be entirely different from the right support worker for somebody else. And so we don't have a giant pool of people. We recruit specifically for you, specifically for the people that you want to have on your team. So we talk to people, they tell us their story, they tell us what they need, and then we write a job ad that uniquely looks for those people. And then frequently we find ourselves calling bike repair shops to find people passionate about cycling, or emailing all the local church youth groups to try and find someone who fits this exact role. So while we do generic recruitment, kind of we use student job search and things, we also specifically dig into the community that you need to find people from, with the goal of taking all that legwork out of it for you and then leaving you with hopefully wonderful candidates who actually want the job that you're offering, are available for the hours that you can do. And so we've done recruitment for, it's about 250 families at this point. And so in that space, we have, had really great success finding some really unique and fascinating people to come into the workforce. Um, yeah, and so what does recruitment look like, I guess, practically, is that no complicated process. You give us a call, you send us an email, you tell us that you'd like our help, and then usually we book a Zoom and have that conversation. But if you don't want a Zoom, it can be something else. And then it takes, on average, 6 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, to find you some good applicants. You get to pick. If you don't like them, we keep looking. If you reject a lot, we've probably got to talk about it, but most often it's one or two and people find a nice match. And then you hire them, they're your employees, and so you do your normal process with Manawanui to make that happen. And as a ballpark, because then people go, what does it cost? As a ballpark, it costs about $1,000. So it depends if you want to help with reference checks or interviews or all the different pieces. You can tell us how much help you want, but most often it's about $1,000. Shall I keep rolling or should we stop and chat about that one?
Simon speaking. Yeah, I've got a few questions about recruitment. The first
Mhm.
one, a lot of people, when they're finding support outside of their immediate family, or even with immediate family, they can struggle to explain to their employee the nature of the relationship due to the wages coming from individualized funding. How do you cover that when you're, like you said, contacting the bike repair shop and explaining the uniqueness of individualized funding?
Ainsley speaking. That's a great question. So what happens is when people apply, they talk to me or to one of my two colleagues, and so we will explain that we are working on behalf of the family to find these people, explain who's going to be the boss in the dynamic, and then we've got some kind of resources that we leave with people, both for the family and for the employee, to give them a bit of information about what they're getting into. It doesn't explain all the complexities of legal employment and all those sorts of things, but just to be clear about who's the employer and how, like a little bit of how individualized funding works, so that people know, I guess, what who to go to with their questions, what to do when they're concerned, you know, those sorts of things.
Simon speaking. Thanks, Ainsley. And do you have some really fun success stories of really reaching into some bizarre recruitment avenues? And what is some of the more interesting places you've found the right support person for someone?
Ainsley speaking. Um, Absolutely. We've had some really interesting ones. One of my favorites, one of the really popular ones actually, was a man who runs like a tarot card reading business. And so he needed someone, he really engages on that spiritual level with people. He needed someone who really philosophically aligned with how he perceives the world, how he communicates, because he doesn't communicate with words. And so it was really reaching out into the spiritual community. And so we were emailing um, like some shops who sold items like that and asking them to put flyers in their doors. We did all sorts of we went to some of the like markets. We sent some flyers to the people who ran some markets that were kind of aligned to that philosophy. But actually, when we put a job ad like that on Student Job Search, we were overwhelmed with people who were like, that is me. That is how I do my life. I didn't know I could be a support worker. And that's what I love about what we do is the people who go, I didn't know that this was work I could do. And they've come in through a different interest or passion. We've had a job ad of a person whose job title is Mad Scientist Seeks Minion. Because he's like, that's how I am. That's how I do the world. And so it was kind of filled with his dark humor and interesting puns. Because we were like, oh, I don't know that people will apply for it. But every time we got someone who applied for a different job, they didn't get him. He needed the person who thought that his funny was funny, who goes, I would love to be a mad scientist's minion, not someone who goes, that's a little much for me. So for me, it's those sorts of things that really, yeah, make a difference. That, and I've learned there's a lot about young people who like gaming is not specific enough. Looking for a young person who could come and do gaming with another young person doesn't get any applicants. But if I'm like, do you love this game, and this game, and do you hate this game, and this game? You know, kind of polarize people seems to get some really great outcomes. And then I'm on all sorts of weird Discord servers for gamers around the country because you have to dig deep, find the people where the people are. And so that's, yeah, weird Discord servers. Things I didn't know existed until I had to go digging into it.
Simon speaking, yeah, that is so true. On the outside looking in, all video gamers are exactly the same. They play video games. But once you're in the community, yes, each video game following is very different and has differing views about other people who play different games. So that's quite a good observation. And for those who are looking for themselves, that's probably something there's a nice free bit of advice there from Ainsley.
Absolutely.
So if somebody's coming to you for the first time to do recruitment and they're brand new to the employment relationship, and I know you aren't an employment advisory or an employment lawyer, but what kind of support and guidance, or who do you link people up to give them that additional support so that they're confident that once they've found this person through you, they can actually make the most of them as that employee-employer relationship?
And that's, oh, Ainsley speaking. That's a really tricky bit because we aren't kind of employment advisors, so we don't give strict HR advice. We can't tell you if someone should be employed under this contract or that contract. But we certainly do have some lists of places where you can go to find suitable employment contracts, resources that we can explain to people the difference between some of those, kind of casual employment versus part-time employment. We've got websites we can direct people to, and we can help people check their thinking on things. But we can't be the person who says you should employ that person on a part-time contract. Here's the exact terms and conditions you use. So yeah, definitely we do have. Most often, people have done their research. They think they know what they're going to do. And then they come to us and go, I think that I'm going to create this, I'm going to do it like this. And then usually at that point, we can kind of say, well, have you considered? Have you read this stuff? But most often, yeah. And then where we can, we'll send them back to their IF host if their IF host has got some resources they can share. But it's a really tricky spot for people who feel really uncertain about employment because there isn't amazing resources that can talk you through all of the complexities of HR legislation and those sorts of things.
Simon speaking, yeah. And a quick shout out to the Employers and Manufacturers Association. If you are with Manawanui, they are a great additional bonus of being with us, that you can call their advice line and speak to an employment lawyer for free of charge over the phone and get general guidance. And you can also use your IF if you need specific advice on an employment situation. I think now's a great time to move on to the topic of planning. We've seen planning get a bit of the spotlight following the flexible funding changes over the last few months. With everybody who's new into the system going through a new assessment process and being given a My DSS funding plan. And so there is this renewed focus on plans and the purpose of somebody's funding being really key. But I'm really keen to get your perspective on what a NASC created plan versus a plan developed with flying kites can do, and what is that difference and why it is important to work with someone like yourselves.
Ainsley speaking. That it's a really complex thing. There's a difference between a plan to access your funding, a plan that you make with DSS, with your NASC um, to enable you to access your money, is really different from a goal plan that's going to help you change life and move into a future. And not everybody needs a complicated plan to help them change their lives and move into their future. But there are definitely points in life where you're trying to make changes and you're trying to build traction. So we do kind of goal planning usually in two main ways. The first is for people who are just feeling stuck and they need a space to talk through, this is where we're at, this is the funding we've got, this is what I'm doing with my week, this is how I'm utilizing my supports. Am I doing it right? Have we got any cool things I haven't heard about or ways I could spend my funding that I could like utilize? That it's more kind of a brainstorming and refocusing conversation. And so those often we can talk to people maybe just as a one-off session. And so we'll talk them through it. They'll go, look, this is what I've got. I've got a NASC conversation coming up, or I've not sure after the changes that have happened, or I'm just feeling a bit adrift and I'd love to talk it through with someone. So that process for us is one of the ways that we do goal planning. And the other is more of this kind of holistic, how do you change things? And so that's often around people leaving school, people leaving home, lots of stuff around when parents are aging and they're needing a bit of help to kind of plan for that future. Um, and so that is more kind of in depth and engaged. And so for me, those are two different kinds of plans, right? One is like a brainstorm. It's like a reasonably high level, top of your mind thing. And the other one's a much more intensive planning for a big change. So when we do that kind of planning, it's usually kind of over a series of conversations, usually for me, 3 or 4 conversations that talk through where you're at. And then this kind of picture of where we want to be way off 10 years from now. And then how are we building our steps to get there. And the reason we do it over multiple conversations is because if you do that, 3 conversations every 2 weeks, over 6 weeks, you've already made some change. Over 6 weeks, you've started actioning some stuff. And so you feel like you've already built some momentum towards where you're trying to get to. So for people who are in that, like, oh, we know we could achieve this thing, make a big thing happen in my life, um, it's giving you a bit of kind of support and push to keep that rolling. And what I tend to find is that people do a lot more in between those 3 meetings than they do, in months without talking to me, because they're like, oh, I'm going to see Ainsley again in 2 weeks. I better find out about that thing or enroll in that course or whatever I was going to do so that I can tell her that one's done and we'll move on to the next bit. So sometimes even just having that external kind of person can be really helpful. And sometimes with people, when we do that, we stay in relationship with them. So they come back on all sorts of frequencies. I've got people that I talk to every couple of weeks, and I've got people who I talk to 2 or 3 times a year. And they just pop back in either because for them that external accountability is helpful, that they're like, if I book a meeting with Ainsley, I'll get stuff done. And otherwise because they need that kind of, we thought we knew where we were going and now we've changed a little bit, and so they come back for a bit more kind of now where to. So yeah, it really kind of varies depending on what you want, and that's the joy of us being not contracted by anybody, is that you tell us that you want this or this or this or have it upside down, we'll find a way to make it work for you. Because it's remote. We can work with you wherever you are in the country. And it's just about meeting you where you're at and trying to help you get whichever outcome you need, because I think both are really valuable at different points of time.
Simon speaking, awesome. Do you have a good example of some success you've had with some of that more long-term or huge transitional focused planning with someone that you've worked with?
Yeah. Oh, Ainsley speaking. Yeah. Okay. So it must have been late 2024. I met a family at one of the transition expos, and they were just in the process of unexpectedly leaving school. And so we came into relationship because they didn't know what life after school was going to be. They had a plan, they didn't think it was going to work. So we did some, like a block of 3 meetings to kind of build this future plan. And through that, some really key pieces of well-being and, kind of their chunky life goals came out, that they really had this little business that they'd started that they wanted to grow, that they wanted to be able to live independently away from mum. And so there was kind of these, and to have some support that was sustainable and genuine. So they were kind of these things that we knew 10 years from now, 2 years from now, the stuff was going to be important. So over the course of that year, we kind of did that planning piece over maybe 2.5 months. And we wrote up this beautiful plan. And then I helped them recruit some team members to make that happen. And then they got maybe 3 months through that, and I came back in and met with the whole team and went, this was the goals, where are we, where are we going, to kind of help them get some momentum again. And then probably at about 6 months, they stopped and they went, it's not working. It turns out that his health needs had changed, and that this beautiful thing that they'd started with his business had gotten really too hard and overwhelming, and they had to roll it back down. And so I came back in again. We had a couple of conversations, one with just mum and one with the support team, to recalibrate, I guess. Um, and then yeah, I think I've probably seen them twice since then. So it was this big, beautiful goal planning process, but that ability to kind of go, we thought that he would have the stamina to do this stuff, didn't. So we're kind of readjusting. And so now his business went from this to this, and then down to really small again. His team's been really stable, but also mum's moved out. That wasn't what they'd planned. They'd planned that he was going to move out, but actually mum's moved out, and he's got a new flatmate who's just moved in about a month ago. Because actually they decided that he was best in his own home that was accessible to him. And so they found, and mum was like, well, we'd have to find some special flatmate arrangement. But actually, they just advertised on Facebook and found a really cool local guy who wanted a flat. That they thought it was complicated, and we talked about it, and it was actually really easy. Yeah.
Simon speaking. That's wonderful. We've got some time left, and I wanted to make sure we focus on some of the exciting projects we plan to talk about. So tell us, what have you got working on that isn't planning or recruitment?
So one of my real beliefs about Flying Kites, one of the reasons we're a charity, is because there are so many gaps in the system, so many places where people get stuck, so many things that don't quite work right. And so for me, part of what we're trying to do, we run those two services, and then we're trying to create ways that people can access more information, use their funding better, that sort of stuff. So on our website, we've got a series of resources. One's about individualized funding. One compares all the individualized funding hosts and how they work and what they charge on objective information, not my personal opinions. Um, and one's about preparing for a needs assessment, but I haven't written a new one since we changed things this year. It's on my to-do list. Last year, we wrote a huge resource about moving out of home. So that's one of our big ones at the moment. It's it's about 30,000 words if you read the whole thing cover to cover. So we didn't print it. But it talks you through the process of getting ready to move out of home. And so there's a piece about finding good flatmates. There's a piece about planning for risk. There's a piece about technology and how that might help you when you're moving out of home. It's cool. I talk about moving out of home, but it doesn't have to be moving for the first time. It can be any process where you're changing your living situation and needing a bit of space to reflect. Because what it is that we've written a whole lot of information to help you think about it. And then there's a worksheet for each section that you can do or not do, um, that helps you think through what that means for you. So you write yourself a profile about a flatmate, or you write yourself a plan of what you're going to do as the next steps. And you can jump around. Don't do the whole thing cover to cover if you don't need to. You pop into the topics that are relevant to you. And it's there for anyone who's considering changing living situations at any point, to try and help you make it happen. The other big project that I wanted to talk about is, we're running some training sessions for support workers. The first one of those is on Thursday. So there's going to be 4 sessions, and the first one's really about kind of some of those key principles and philosophies. So it talks about the social model of disability and enabling good lives. Um, just trying to help support workers to think about some of those fundamental pieces. The next one's about communication. So there's 4 sessions, and if you want to send your support workers, it's free. There's no complicated anything. They just need to give us their name and their email address, and we'll send them a Zoom link. And if you can't come, or you want your support workers to know about it in 6 months' time, they're all the first half of it is recorded. So the content is recorded, and it will be loaded onto our YouTube channel and linked from our website. So people can come back anytime. And then after the half an hour of talking presentation, there'll be a half an hour chat, so that we can answer people's direct questions. But the goal of that is, again, because we want new people to come into this workforce, we need to have these random people who come from strange places and join the mahi that we do. And so our goal is to try and make that really accessible. We're going to give them some information about how to find jobs as a support worker and what to ask people if they're applying for a job, so that people feel like they can apply for a job with you, wherever they see that job, and that we can get these wonderful, skilled, talented people to come and be support workers or personal assistants or whatever language you like.
Simon speaking. So it's not only just about learning the sort of practical side of being a support worker, but also, introducing people who have that caring character or really do like to have a good relationship with people that they work with, and getting them to understand that support work is a great avenue for them. So it's, you could say that even for disabled people, to encourage them to share it in their circles as a way of helping, like you said, grow that network of support workers.
Exactly. Ainsley speaking. That's exactly it for me. Is a big piece of how we do recruitment is, yes, we want people to get jobs through flying kites, but more than that, we want the support work sector to have more people, to have talented people to come in and do this work and to stay when they come. And so for me, that's a big piece of it, is we're running the workshop, yes, to bring people into flying kites, but more so that people go, yeah, actually, I could do that kind of work. Or I didn't like that one support work job I had. Turns out there's a whole lot of different kinds of support work. So just trying to open the doors and bring people in and get people to stay, in helping disabled people. So yes, we would love it to be shared, even if you don't want to come. If you don't know, if you know people who are vaguely interested, then we'd love to have them there. There's no complicated anything. They just ask for the Zoom link and they shall come, or get sent the video.
Simon speaking. Awesome. Thanks, Ainsley. I have put those links into the comments, so please check them out. What is the best way for people to get in touch if they're interested in any of your wonderful services?
So our wonderful website is a good place to go and have a look. But because we're so small, if you just email us, which is hello@flyingkites.org.nz, then you will always get to me. You might get to my 2 colleagues as well, but you'll always get to me. So you're really welcome. You can book book a Zoom conversation with us on the website. You can email us. You can pick up the phone, and you'll probably get me. We're pretty flexible. We just want you to connect with us if we can be helpful. That's what we're here for.
Simon speaking, wonderful. Thank you so much for the conversation, Ainsley. I hope there's somebody out there who's found this conversation interesting, and please do share the links to the support worker training support program that Ainsley is starting this week. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week, and we will have Tony from Allies Aotearoa on next week for the live stream, so look out for that one. I will see you all again, same time, same place next week. Ka kite. And we're clear.